Hello everyone and welcome to the live Q&A with me, Professor Michael Scott. It is the 9th of September. How did it happen that quickly that summer is drawing to a close? I hope that you enjoyed the last few days of halcyon hot weather that we had in the UK, although the rain has returned with a vengeance today, at least where I am. So I hope that you guys have been well. I hope that everything is starting to shape up for the autumn and that you all had wonderful times over the last couple of weeks in the end of summer. And as always, you have been sending some brilliant questions in for the live Q&A. But of course, before we kick off with your new questions, we have to first think about Prize Week. Yes, every month or so we look at the questions that we've managed to answer on the Q&As over the last couple of times, and we look for the best one in order to send them a prize for their inspiring, thought-provoking, exciting, or just sometimes plain weird and ridiculous, but nevertheless extremely entertaining question. So thank you everyone for the brilliant questions that you've sent in, and of course that only managed to get to answer some of them over the last Q&As. I apologise profusely if I don't get to answer your questions. But it's lovely to see you, and we've been looking through the questions for the September prize. And for me there is a clear winner here that really kind of got me thinking about something that I'd never thought about to do with the ancient world before. So the prize for September, drum rolls, if we could have some background drum rolls, goes to Nassim Akhtar, who asked, I was wondering if many people in antiquity were short-sighted and how they rectified it, or have we become more visually challenged over the centuries? And if you remember, that got us into a whole sort of discussion of actually, yes, the concept of myopia, short-sightedness, dating back to Aristotle with his brilliant thoughts on kind of interesting thoughts on why it was and what caused it, but actually then thinking about how they wouldn't have been able necessarily to rectify it, and indeed in some cultures and times and places, myopia was considered a really advantage because it allowed you to focus on close work, particularly thinking of all those medieval monks and their manuscripts. So Nassim Akhtar, thank you so much for your brilliant question. Congratulations, you are our winner this time. So please do get in touch via email, michaelscottacademic@gmail.com, or thinking through the Facebook page in order to let us know your address where you would like your prize, which can either be a signed copy of Ancient Worlds, or it can be a copy of, if you have little ones or people you want to give it to, young kids you want to give it to, the Story of Ancient Greece book that I wrote for Key Stage, particularly Key Stage 2 and 3. So let us know what you would like, and brilliant, and thank you as always to everyone for your questions. Now, moving on to the brilliant questions that we have been having in. Tracy, you were telling your optician about that 2 days afterwards, after we had the question. There you go, you see, spreading the love of the ancient world. Well done indeed. That's what we like to see. I bet that optician has never realised that their role kind of goes all the way through back to the ancient Greek world. A dog barking, no, not dog barking, chair moving, Linda. There you go. You can see how high-tech this is. No soundproof recording studio for me in any way, shape or form. So questions, right, and here's another one which I think is a great question, and which again has got me thinking about a whole area of the ancient world that I'd only sort of briefly come into contact with through the study of Greek religion. But Rebecca Louise has asked this: what did the ancients say when they sneezed? Now this was asked live last time, because I think if I remember rightly, I sneezed last time, didn't I, while we were live on camera. So what did the ancients say when you sneezed? Now, I'd come into contact with this through the Greeks, because one of the things that we do when we're studying about the religion of the ancient Greeks is think about how they saw a god or a spirit kind of in everything, literally everything around them. And so anything that was motivated or happened out of the blue suddenly, uncontrollably, was considered to be some kind of message from the gods, and that included sneezing. So sneezing in the ancient Greek world was a really good omen. What you famously in the Odyssey, we have Penelope, the loyal wife of Odysseus, who's talking about her longing for her husband to come home. And at the end of the speech, in which she says, you know, kind of how much she wishes this would happen, her son Telemachus sneezes, and she takes this as a fantastic omen that what she has hoped for is going to come true. Because a sneeze is something uncontrollable, it comes over you, thus it must have been inspired by a god or a goddess. It's a way of the gods telling you kind of what is going to happen. So sneezes in the ancient Greek world are really, really good thing. Now, I also, in looking around and doing some research for this question, I've come across with perhaps one of the best academic articles that I have seen in a long time. So if by any chance you guys have access to JSTOR, which is the online repository for academic journal papers, and if not, I can download this, and don't tell anyone, I might be able to make a little bit of it available through the Facebook page. Going back to the Scientific Monthly journal, back in 1919, there was an article written by W.D. Wallace called The Romance and Tragedy of Sneezing. And it's absolutely brilliant, going through and around all the different ancient cultures, asking about kind of how they react to sneezing. So this is an absolute must read, and it talks to us about how the Romans would respond, again seeing this as kind of a sign of good luck, right? Often responding with kind of salve, may you have health. Thinking about the Greeks apparently also coming back with live Zeus, preserve thee. I love the fact that they translated back in 1919 preserve thee, kind of in good Shakespearean English. And so there is this really quite interesting crossover between the ancient and the modern worlds across numerous ancient cultures. But think about what we say in the modern world with bless you, as Rebecca Louise did, sort of asking about, bless you. We're kind of, in the modern world, that kind of bless you, we're almost inviting and hoping that you have good tidings after your sneeze, aren't we? Whereas in the ancient world, most of the cultures seem to have considered that the sneeze was the example of good tidings coming to you, already being decided for you. It was the god showing their goodwill towards you in particular. So there's a real kind of turnaround of the modern conception of the sneeze, hoping that this may lead to good luck for you. The ancient conception of the sneeze as the marker that good luck has come to you, or has been decided that it will come to you. So absolutely brilliant. I'm loving this kind of discussion. If you have time on JSTOR, go and have a look at the romance and tragedy of sneezing. And for 1919, that is a pretty dramatic academic article title. I don't think back in 1919 you would see many academic articles with a title as rich as that one. So I think we should definitely pay a sense of homage to W.D. Wallace for taking the brave decision to write an article for the Scientific Monthly in 1919 with such a wonderful title. I agree, Alexis, that's a great title for a book. The Romance and Tragedy of Sneezing. This is absolutely great. Like kind of the anyone out there who wants to take that and run with it and write a book entitled by it, go for it. It is yours. Run with it and see. And just remember, just in the the acknowledgements when it's published and becomes that multi-million-pound global bestseller, just remember this Facebook group and this Q&A, and do kind of say a thank you to it was born here, born back in 1919 with W.D. Wallace. You think bless you and have become day have actually become meaningless social fillers, says Lee Edmond. Controversial. Yes, so in some ways, yes, we've absolutely lost in many cultures and many kind of modern settings, any kind of certainly religious connotations. But the have a good day thing, I mean, I always kind of feel this, particularly when you go to America, and kind of people are always saying to you, have a great day, have a great day. And I never quite know how much to take that as a real thought. Please do have a good day, or whether it is a social filler. So any Americans watching out there and listening to this, please do let us know, how should we read the have a good day that one gets in America. I like to think that people are actually truly wishing people to have a good day, and I think we could probably do with a little bit more of that in our world anyway. So Rebecca Louise, thank you so much indeed. Nasim Akhtar, I see you are watching. You are the winner of our September prize, so many congratulations, and do get in touch to let us know how you would like your prize to be sent, and what you would like me to write in the book for you as well when I dedicate it. So brilliant question from Rebecca. Sarah Scotty has got a question on so much of male emotion is taboo today, right? So how accepted was male emotion in Roman times? Would there have been a limit that was taboo? So really interesting question, Sarah, and yes, absolutely. Now, when you think about Roman masculinity and kind of ideas of Roman masculinity, there are certain key words in Latin that kind of always come to mind. Or is it cutting out? I am sorry to hear that. Fingers crossed that kind of you get better reception soon, Sarah, particularly as we are now discussing your question. So male emotion in Roman times. Absolutely. The key words in Latin: dignitas, severitas, auctoritas. These are the kinds of things that Roman men are supposed to have in spades. So authority, severity, seriousness, dignity. This is why, particularly in the Republican era, when you're looking at sculptures of Roman heads, they went for a style of portraiture that was called veristic portraiture. Now, verism, truth, but it's not really actually like photographic truth of people. In fact, actually, what veristic tended to mean is that people wanted to be given more worry lines and more wrinkles and more frowns and be made to look older and thus more responsible and more severitas, auctoritas, dignitas in spades and buckets. And so emotion doesn't really fit in to that kind of category. There were moments kind of in the Roman life when a Roman was allowed to sort of let loose, kick back, as it were, and indulge and engage with kind of their more perhaps emotional side. I'm thinking about obviously kind of parties within the Roman world itself, but also rich Roman men would often be sent off to finishing school in places like Athens, where they would get a rhetorical training, philosophical training, but they would be expected and allowed in that kind of environment to go a little Greek. And that's kind of how the Romans considered if you went too emotional and too kind of over the top, you were going a little Greek. And that was fine, but at the end of the day, it was something to be contained because the Greeks at the end of the day had been militarily defeated by the Romans, right? So you didn't want to be too Greek about it. And when you came home from your finishing school in Athens with your rhetorical flourishes and your philosophical training, it was also very much expected of you to man up and become Roman again. Definitely emotion, not necessarily a good thing in any shape or form. Alexis, really good, interesting question about professional criers at funerals. Absolutely. So there was kind of a role for emotion, particularly emotion in terms of loss and mourning. But I think the key thing is there, the professional criers. So it wasn't you doing it. You would be walking in a state of solemn dignity, auctoritas, severitas, etc. You would have professional mourners who were crying and wailing and grabbing at themselves and kind of tearing apart their clothes to do all that for you. Right, rather than you yourself having to do it at all. So there you have it. Like kind of the Romans are not the most emotionally connected people, definitely not emo types in any way, shape or form. So Sarah, thank you very much indeed for your great question. Now, kind of, have we got time? Where are we? Yeah, we've got time for another question before we go and have a look at what's going on around the world. So let's take one from, a quick one from Catherine Gununion. I don't know how I'm pronouncing your surname, and I'm definitely not pronouncing it right, so I apologise profusely in advance. Catherine's asking, do you have any recommendations on learning more about Carthage and Phoenician cultures, particularly Punic trade routes? Oh, yeah, really, really important topic, and so often left out of the study of the Mediterranean. The Phoenician communities, starting in places like Tyre in the southeastern corner of the Mediterranean, in what is now kind of Lebanon, Israel, etc. And Tyre was one of the richest and most kind of busy trading cities. Think of Tyrian purple coming out of there, etc. Phoenician culture then very early on, massive trading routes in their ships, moving around the whole of the Mediterranean, setting up Carthage as a Phoenician city. Carthage creating its own trading empire that basically dominated the whole of the Western Mediterranean right through until kind of the big clash with Rome in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE, when Rome pushed back Carthage and started to dominate. And then, of course, in the kind of famously in the middle of the 2nd century BCE, with Rome deciding that Carthage had to be destroyed. Hello, Lauren. Hello from Anna, Mickey and Zara. Hello, you three. Thank you so much indeed for tuning in and joining us. I hope that Bonnie Scotland is treating you all well. And it's lovely to have you here. So we are talking about Carthage and the Phoenician traders. Absolutely. And through to Spain, Clive, you're absolutely right. Pushing up in Spain. Sicily, of course, absolutely abundant in Carthaginian material from all of their trading posts. So absolutely fascinating. And yet, because they ultimately ended up the losers to Rome, they get basically written out of the Mediterranean history that we like to tell, which is all about Rome, Greece and Rome. And that's coupled by the fact that Carthaginian, Phoenician and then Carthaginian cultures were often not particularly kind of fixated around the writing down of their own histories, creating their own kind of reports that have endured that we can then pick up and use as evidence to kind of learn about them. So Mickey's learning about the Romans. Bless you, kind of Emerson High. I'm very glad that you're learning about the Romans, but Mickey, you need to learn about the Carthaginians. So go in and tell your teachers tomorrow about the Carthaginians and say, we want to learn. Start stamping your feet on the floor and saying politely to your teachers that you want to learn something about the Carthaginians as well. And so, for instance, some of the most famous Carthaginians you can think of, Hannibal, the great general who took on the Roman world and almost brought it to its knees. We don't have a single source from the Carthaginian side that tells us about Hannibal. It's all coming at us from the Roman side, from the enemies who tell us about this kind of character. Yet we don't have anything coming from the Carthaginian side. But you are glad to hear, I have no doubt, and Catherine, you will be glad to hear that this is changing and we are slowly piecing together a picture of history coming from the Carthaginian sides. And can I recommend, as a starting point, particularly probably more for the adults than for you, Mickey, so Lauren might have to have a look at this for you and help you digest it, but Joe Quinn's In Search of the Phoenicians, absolutely fabulous. Joe Quinn's In Search of the Phoenicians, really putting them back on the map and tackling really interesting and difficult and thorny problems, like, as Clive points out, the whole idea that the Carthaginians went in for child sacrifice, because we seem to find these little pots in all Carthaginian sanctuaries, little pots filled with the ash of burnt bones, and the Romans in particular kind of put forward quite a bit of propaganda around the fact that these are terrible barbaric tribes, the things that the Carthaginians do, sacrificing children. So watch out, Mickey, in particular, that you don't get caught up in any kind of Carthaginian religious festival. So Catherine, thank you so much for your question. Really, really, really important. And it kind of leads us on to thinking about the next question, which is from Tracy Rabbit, asking about where the ancient Greeks saw themselves in terms of their place in history relevant to earlier civilizations, but also their place in the world geographically, given the limits of travel. Brilliant question, Tracy, and I'm loving this kind of two different perspectives. How did they see themselves in the big, long sweep of human history? And I always find it fascinating to remember, right, that when the Romans turned up in Egypt, and conquered Egypt and made it part of their dominion. So effectively, in the last 30 years or so, before the birth of Jesus Christ, right? So kind of 30 BC, kind of end of the first century BC, just getting into the AD period. The ancient Egyptian monuments that they came across when they moved into places like Alexandria, and particularly around Cairo and the Giza pyramids, for instance, those pyramids were already older to the Romans than the Romans are to us today. Right? Because the Great Pyramid of Giza is about 2,500 BC when it's built. And of course, the Romans were turning up there in pretty much, say, 0 BC. 2,500 years ago, we're only 2,100 years on past the Romans, right? So absolutely, all of these ancient cultures, the Greeks, the Romans, and others, all had to face up to the fact that there were monumental communities who had existed in bygone ages before them. And they had to conceptualize of that and their place within the big kind of human story of history as a result. And they did that in loads of different ways. So obviously, if you think about the Greeks, as Tracy's question was focused, the Greeks are telling stories to themselves from the get-go about what happened in those bygone ages. Think about the great myths and the great epic stories. These are all things that happened in their pasts. Think about also the kind of the early narratives from people like Hesiod in the Greek world that are actually telling stories of, from the very beginning, our Big Bang, our modern idea of the Big Bang, or for them and Hesiod, the kind of beginnings of the world as created by the gods, how then it came back down through time to them. So they are fascinated about putting themselves within a temporal kind of line And when they discover stuff, so the Greeks famously discover stuff, they dig up what we now know to be dinosaur bones. And I think we talked about this kind of a couple of sessions ago. The Greeks respond to that by going, this is physical proof of those mythical bygone ages when there were semi-divine beings walking the planet, heroes like Hercules, giants, titans, all of these sorts of things. They took those physical bones that they dug up as proof of these living worlds. And I think it's absolutely key that the Greeks and Romans were themselves fascinated by the past. My favourite story is Julius Caesar when he turns up in Egypt in the first century, end of the first century BC. He goes to see the great tomb in Alexandria, which is the tomb of Alexander the Great Greek general who died back in the 4th century BCE. And he goes in there to peer over and look at the body of Alexander the Great, and he gets so close, up and personal, with this now hundreds and hundreds of year old corpse that he doesn't realise how close he's got, and he accidentally knocks Alexander the Great's nose off, which sort of crumbles in front of him. Poor old Alexander the Great. Thanks, Julius. That was really much appreciated. So, Tracy, thank you so much for your absolutely brilliant question. We must briefly have a think about the things that are on around the world in the classical with a classical remit. So, first off, it's stuff in the news. So, Charlotte Higgins, who's an absolutely fantastic writer and, of course, journalist, has got a new book out today, which is kind of all about Greek myths. So, if you want to know more about Greek myths and Greeks' conceptualizations of their past, do go and have a look at Charlotte's book. That's absolutely brilliant. And in Alexandria, as we were just talking about, I'm sorry, you're going to hear a plane going overhead any second. Kind of in Alexandria, the city of the tomb of Alexander the Great. I'll talk louder while this plane, or I think it's actually a helicopter, goes over. Sadly, not for me, and I don't think I've done anything wrong, so I don't think it's the police helicopter either. They have found a whole new area, residential and commercial suburb of the ancient city of Alexandria in the modern city of Alexandria. So this is going to be absolutely extraordinary. So it's not the kind of main monumental civic thoroughfares of the city. It's all the stuff where people were living and doing day-to-day business. So the sorts of things we'll be able to find are really kind of about kind of how individuals just spent their normal everyday, which will be fantastic to find out more as that unravels. And then I particularly like this as well, a piece of surviving, again, really early poetry, pushing back the kind of history of poetry, kind of as pushed it back further in time. And kind of the ancient poetry says, they say what they like, let them say it, I don't care. Go on, love me, it does you good, kind of was a whole series of poetry that's found inscribed on 20 gemstones and now as a graffito in Cartagena in Spain. And people are comparing it to the wonderful lyrics of Taylor Swift, Haters Gonna Hate. So there you go. Ancient and modern, the themes are just there side by side. Tracy, you're absolutely right. We didn't get to think geographically. So kind of we'll come back to that at another point in time. In terms of things on around the country, if you can get to Coventry on Sunday, the 19th of September, come and join me. I'll be there kind of helping run a whole day dedicated to the languages, the 120 plus languages that are spoken in Coventry, and we'll be getting a bit of Latin in there that was spoken once upon a time in Coventry and is now being spoken again thanks to our new project of getting the Romans in Coventry into all of Coventry's primary schools. Come and join us. We'll be hearing about lots of different languages, lots of fun games and interactive games for people of all ages, along with a whole series of really thought-provoking talks and workshops thinking about the life stories of Coventry that need to be told. So do come along and join us. That's at the Assembly Festival Gardens in Coventry on Sunday the 19th of September between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. Absolutely free. Do come along and join us. And then also we want to flag to you this in advance on the 18th of February next year, 2022. Get out your diaries. I'm going to be at the Science Museum in London in a panel discussion about when worlds collide, how modern technology reveals the ancient past. So you can get your tickets for that now. And then where else are we going to look for? Oh yes, the Lytham St Anne's Classical Association crossword is back. Come along. Catherine, I'm going to be at both Treehouse and the Piccolo, depending depending on what time you'll be there. I'll be running the talks in the Piccolo on the 19th from 12 until 3. And then after that, I will be in the treehouse. Mickey has a question. Why did the Romans like to march? Why didn't they walk normally? Good question, Mickey. Why did they spend all this time marching around on their straight roads? Well, if you're going to get somewhere quick, as a Roman infantry, as a Roman legionary, then marching was an incredibly kind of efficient way of getting people from place to place very, very quickly. But if you weren't marching as a soldier, if you were a Roman senator, then you were very much supposed to have a much more elegant, slow, meaningful gait and walking style. You wanted to walk with dignity. You wanted to walk with authority. You wanted to walk giving off an air of supreme confidence and experience and world weightiness. So, Nikki, you need to practice, again, going into walking around the house and telling your parents that you are walking like a Roman senator with dignity and a severity and authority, and you kind of tell them how it is. Or you can walk around really quickly like a Roman legionary. You can make your own mind up which you want to do. And if you want a bit more Egypt, don't forget You're Dead to Me has a great podcast out from Ramesses the Great. So do have a look at that as well. Have we got time for one more question? I think we do. Before we're going to finish up. And kind of the yes, I've been meaning to get to this question for a little while. So Chantal Briand, this is absolutely brilliant, brings us on to the question of the Romans. We've been talking lots about the Romans today, but it's asking about names. Do we know what the most common surnames were back in the day in the Roman world? So we've got Smith and Jones, and in the UK. What are the common surnames in other countries around the world where you're listening? Kind of in France, I think it's Dupont. I think is kind of one of the most common ones as well. But is there a kind of anecdotal Smith and Jones in cultures and countries from where you are watching? Do let us know. But was there anything, Chantal asked, like that back in the Roman world? Well, actually, yes. In the Republican era, so before the time of the Roman emperors, so that's everything from the foundation of Rome, which supposedly happened, we know the foundation of Rome with Romulus and Remus, don't we? But kind of through the regal period and then the establishment of the Republic, the kind of sort of proto-democracy of ancient Rome that started off in the very end of the 6th century BCE when Rome kicked out its last king and ran all the way through until the 1st century BCE when the Roman Emperor Augustus established imperial command and control. There was a very, very formal naming system. So, Vicky, you can also go into school and you can tell them how you are going to name yourself as a Roman. And you had 3 names. You had 3 names as a Roman, right? You had your praenomen, kind of a first name. Right? Then you had your nomen gentilicium, which was your name that came from the tribe that you belonged to, the gens. So you didn't get to choose that because that was the tribe that your parents had come from, their parents and their parents before. So that was sort of decided for you in advance. So there were only so many names, nomen gentiliciums, as there were tribes. And then your third name was your cognomen, as known in Latin. But this was a kind of a nickname to establish which kind of branch of a gens you were coming from. But again, it was hereditary, so it would be exactly the same. I guess a kind of a bit like a surname, but certainly wouldn't change when you got married, for instance, or something like that. So you've got your praenomen, your nomen gentilicium decided for you, and your cognomen decided for you. So not much choice there. And then the most extraordinary work has been done, actually counting up all the people we know named from the Roman world during the regal and republican periods through Roman inscriptions. So actual kind of messages left by Romans on stone. And we found that, right, there are just 17 first names that account for 98% of all named Romans across this period of well over 500 years. Right? And 17 names. And of those, right, just the first 3, the 3 most popular, account for 59% of that 98%, right? So there were a lot of Romans out there with the same name, or at least the same first names. Although, of course, by the time when you kind of mixed a first name with a second name with a third name, then you got something more individual. But those three most popular first names, so you can choose one of these for yourself: Lucius, Gaius, or Marcus. Lucius, Gaius, or Marcus. And after that, you could have, the next most popular was Quintus, and after that, Publicus. There you go. Now, that's, of course, if you were a man. Right? But what should you be getting? So even less choice if you were a woman. I'm so sorry. Because basically, you as a woman, as a daughter of a Roman citizen, got given the feminized version, right, of the nomen gentilicium of your dad. Right? So the tribe name of your dad, you got an A shoved on the end of it to make it into a feminine word. And if there was more than one daughter, well, they just got added number 1, number 2, and number 3 after it. So they all had the same name with number 1, number 2, or number 3 after it. So I'm sorry to say to you that certainly in the Republican era or in the imperial period, things relax a bit actually, and there's lots of people start using their nicknames. So you get emperors who are known by their nicknames rather than their real names, etc. And it all becomes a bit more fluid and a bit more relaxed and a bit more fun. But kind of in the Republican period, it is absolutely regimented. And yes, very confusing at parties. So kind of you can imagine how many, but on the other hand, makes things life a lot easier as well. If you know that 59% of the total number of people you're going to be meeting are going to be called Lucius, Gaius, or Marcus, actually that does really help, doesn't it? In some way or shape or form. So absolutely brilliant question from Chantal. Thank you all so much. What a great Q&A. It's been really a joy to be with you today, and I hope that you stay well over the next couple of weeks. Now, term is starting for us at Warwick, so we are going to be pretty busy over the next couple of weeks. So I hope to see you on the 19th of September in Coventry. But if I can't, then we will be meeting again for a Q&A next time on the 30th of September at 5 p.m. So kind of 30th of September, 5 p.m. In the meantime, if you sneeze, I'm very, very glad for you. Have a fantastic couple of weeks. Come up with your Roman names and send them in to us. And kind of in the meantime, stay safe, stay well, and look after yourselves. All right, take care. Bye-bye.